You're listening to the Run Radio podcast series for business, featuring Michele Rickman Coaching. Welcome back to the Run Radio podcast for business series with Michele Rickman Coaching. This is episode 2. So in episode 1, we got to learn a little more about you and how you got to where you are today with your coaching and helping other people. So we're going to talk about a topic that you are really familiar with helping people with, and it is harnessing your fear.
Yes, absolutely.
So why harness your fear? How did you notice this was such a problem for so many of us?
Well, as I said in the first episode, I was a high school theater teacher and speech and drama, and kids, it started with students being so terrified to get up and talk. And the majority of the class, you take a public speaking class, and even in college, I'm sure everybody notices that 90% of the class is nervous, 75% of the class is scared, and almost half of the people in the class will be almost terrified to get up and speak in front of people. So I saw that in my kids. Add to that it was a very small school, but speech and theater competitions, speech and drama competitions are not, and debate are not divided by size of school like sports are. Yeah. So you're competing against all the big schools. And so I really needed to help the kids figure out how to overcome that fear. Nobody should have to be terrified to be seen and heard. and that's what was happening. And I had it myself even then too, because I could get up and talk to high school kids all day long, but get up in front of parents or other teachers, and I would have those nerves and feel it too. Yeah. And then I realized too that people have stage fright in theater, but it's a little easier for some people to get over it because you're a character. You're not yourself. Yes. If you can memorize the lines and you can go out there and be the character, it's almost less intimidating. But to go out there and be yourself. So my kids who did oratory, extemporaneous speaking, things like that, it's them presenting their own ideas, their own conclusions, things like that. And it's scary. So what do we do then? Well, I think the biggest thing is we have to harness it. We have to understand, my theory was at the time, and even now, because when I moved into the business world, I realized it was the same thing. It wasn't just my high school kids. No. It's a lot of people. And at business meetings, I noticed too that people would stand up, and I call it butt seat disconnect. When your butt leaves the seat, your brain disconnects and you can't think of what to say. So you have to harness that fear. It is, you have to understand where it comes from. And so when I started working with my students and then moving into that, I realized that it's really scary because they don't understand what's happening. We and then adults too, we don't understand why all the things that start happening to us are happening to us. So I realized that if you could harness that fear and pull it in and understand it, you can control it.
Okay. So is there a difference between professionally speaking and then doing personal stuff too? So if you're, are we going to need to apply different concepts for our audience, or should we just be able to kind of harness this fear and it'll apply to no matter who we're talking to?
It really should apply to whoever you're talking to. What I have found so far is this has been 100% effective. And it really...
And don't say, imagine the audience in your underwear.
Yeah, don't.
That is the worst.
It's worse. And you know what? It also, it just scares you. I mean, there's some people you shouldn't ever imagine in their underwear. No. And I found, that's what my students would say is, don't say in their underwear. That's just horrible. So, yeah, don't do that. That is not the solution.
Thank you.
Yes. But no, it applies to any type of speaking that you can control this. What I found is that if you can get over that hump and you can harness that fear, It improves your personal communications. It actually improves your business communications tremendously. Interpersonal communications in the office, but also at home. Because anytime that you can build that confidence in speaking, then you can use it anywhere, and you can be better heard by the people around you. And in the business world, though, it can affect you getting job promotions. It can affect you getting the job itself in an interview. It affects how you communicate with your peers, but also how you communicate with your employees. So by harnessing the fear, you're learning how to more effectively say what you need to say. And I've seen it work for people in, everyday settings, people who had to speak in front of the PTA at my kids' school. I helped them with this. And the more you do it, then the more confidence you get. So it's cyclical.
Yeah.
If you can harness that fear. And when I say, that's why I say harness the fear, because you don't actually always get rid of all of it. You know how to mitigate it. You know how to handle it.
Okay. And communication is like the number one thing that I think we all could get better at, but we don't always understand it. I remember someone asking me, well, when you're in a certain situation, where do you feel, your anxiousness or your whatever? And I'm like, good question. You have to stop and think about where this comes from. So when, you're talking about harnessing that fear and what that fear is, how do we figure out really what it is that is making us so nervous? Because of course, yes, I'm scared, but I don't know more how to tell you than that.
Right. So basically, it's the same thing no matter what fear you're experiencing. The same thing is causing all the feelings. Okay. So you're gonna have a lot of people have physical responses to their fear. The shaky hands, the stuttering, the rapid breathing, or not being able to breathe, not feeling like you can breathe. A lot of people have emotional responses to it, tears, that panic, anger. Some people, like I had students who would just get angry if they had to do a presentation. And then there's the mental, and meaning the mental being that you lose the words. You get up to talk and people say, well, I practiced that speech, hours and hours and hours, and I got up to talk and it just went away. And so there's one key component that causes all of this. All of it is caused by adrenaline. So that's it. There's the magic. It's adrenaline. Adrenaline is responsible. It's not responsible. Adrenaline is released into your body for your fight or your flight response. And so, but the thing is, it's the same adrenaline. It doesn't matter if you're really, really excited and happy about something or you're terrified.
You're still going to
same hormone, same adrenaline, same thing that's being released from your adrenal glands, but it all is dependent on what your brain tells your body to do with it.
Oh, okay.
So it's what your brain is telling your body to do with the adrenaline. Hence, you have to harness it.
Right.
You have to understand it.
Okay.
You have to know where it's coming from. And the interesting thing that I have discovered is, I use my daughter as an example. She always laughs at this, but my youngest daughter is an adrenaline junkie. She's a thrill seeker. And I mean, she's done the ejection seat thing in Branson, and loves roller coasters. We went zip lining, and man, she was the first one to off the thing. Yeah. And yet, she's also an incredible singer who has massive stage fright.
Okay.
Yeah. So I use this as an example. The same adrenaline that allows her to do all of those other things prevents her from feeling comfortable on stage.
Okay, that was one of my next questions was like, well, what about all of these adrenaline junkies should just be jumping up to speak and have no problem whatsoever? So it's not always true.
It's not always true. It's all in what your brain is telling your body to do with that adrenaline. So, if you're walking down a path in the woods and you see a bear,
yeah,
all the same things can happen to you that happen to you if somebody says, hey, you have to speak in front of these 20 people or 100 people or whatever.
Right.
And so it's the same adrenaline.
Yeah.
It's not like you have different adrenaline compartments that get released.
Right. Okay.
And I'm sure there's a whole scientific side to that as far as different types of adrenaline and things like that. But the basic gist is your brain tells your body you have to decide fight or flight. And so here's some adrenaline to help you.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're a runner.
Yeah.
Okay. So the same adrenaline that keeps you going to the finish line when everything in your body is saying, stop! My feet hurt. My legs hurt. My knees hurt. I'm thirsty. And you still keep going. Same adrenaline that when you're getting ready to go up on a stage and speak to people is making you go, stop! It's all in what your brain is telling your body to do with it.
Okay.
So when you're running, your fight response is going to kick in, and you're going to fight through it. So in your case, when it's a fight response, the adrenaline is going to give you better lung capacity. It is going to give you focus, laser focus, more strength. We see stories all the time about the mom who lifted the heavy object off of her kid, and it really happens. Those aren't made up stories because it's that surge of adrenaline that gave her the focus to do that. So in your case, you're running. It's a marathon. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. And so subconsciously, you've been telling your brain this is important and you have to fight through. And so our subconscious is literal. Whatever we tell it, it believes it. So you've been prepping for this the whole time with the attitude of, I will do this. I get to do this. I want to do this. I'm excited to do this. And so the adrenaline in your body does all the things it needs to do to help you. That last little burst of energy that you need, that last laser focus on everything. So what happens though if every message you've been telling yourself is fear, I need to flee this?
It's going to be a tough race.
It's going to be a tough race. Exactly. This is bad. My legs hurt. I might fall. I might, all of those things. So at that point, you're prepping your brain for the adrenaline to shut you down, to get you out, to do whatever it is that you need to do. So it's funny because people will say, oh, well, obviously I'm on that path with that bear and it's going to kick in my flight response. No, it kicks in your fight response. It's going to make you run faster. It's going to make you be able to climb that tree. That flight response is when you shut down, you flee, you can't function.
I always have to stop and think about those two, the flight or fight, because it's kind of like, wait, flight you would think means
run away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of does, but it means almost emotionally run away from it. Right. The flight response is the person who collapses on the path and can't get away. Yeah. So and we do want to flee it. And so for a lot of people, their adrenaline kicks in and that flight response is happening as to, I'm panicked, I'm scared, I can't remember anything I was going to say, I can't get my words out, I'm shaking, I can't breathe. I can't breathe, or I'm breathing too fast. My heart is racing. All of those things. And think about that though. Aren't all of those things the things that keep you going in the race? Heart rate, the deep breaths that you have to take. It's all in what your brain is telling your body to do. So when we start to understand that, then we can put things in place that can help us fight, just like we do. We get excited. We want to stand and give our speech. If we can understand same adrenaline and we have the control, then that begins to change the game for us.
So since we're using the running analogy, I know to get through that race, I'm going to have to train. So to get up and stand, how do I know what my stand and speak? How do I know what my training plan needs to be?
Well, that's a great question. So your training plan needs to be, first of all, you have to change your self-talk. So if I am training for a race and I'm constantly saying, I can't run, I've never been able to run, that's not going to work, right? So you already, when you decide that you're going to do this race, you already are starting your positive self-talk, right? I can do this. I will do this. I want to do this. When we get up to speak, what are some things that come to mind for people? I have to do this.
I have to do this. Oh my goodness. Everyone's looking at me. They're thinking I'm not qualified.
I can't do this. Yes. I have to. I need to. So just changing the words. Words are powerful. We always forget how powerful actual words are. Just these letters that are put together that form a word that we say, they're powerful. And so the first thing that you can do is just change your self-talk about speaking, just like you change your self-talk about that race. So instead of saying, I have to, simply saying, I get to. I get to talk about my knowledge. I get to share with people. And you don't have to believe it in the beginning, because everybody's like, well, I don't feel that way. Well, you probably didn't feel that way about running either. Until you made the decision. So anything that we fight through, so running, or back to that roller coaster analogy of my daughter, she's telling herself every time that she's getting in line for a roller coaster, and we talked about this too, she is saying to herself, this is going to be so much fun. I love it. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to enjoy it. And that's how she gets through that hour-long wait in line to get to that roller coaster. But it's true. That is what people are telling themselves. They're not standing in line going, oh my God, it's going to be so scary. It's going to be terrifying. I'm going to hate it. Because they're never going to get through it. So, those are the things we want assurance for. Same with the race. If you were telling yourself, this is going to be so hard and it's hot and I hate it.
I mean, I may have done that a few times.
Exactly.
But I get what you're saying, though, with kind of shifting the power. No one's making me. This isn't junior high PE test. This is, I chose to train to be here. So it's a little bit different when you look at it in terms of that.
It is. And also, you are empowering yourself. So if you're going from have to get to, need to want to, you are already changing things. If you go from the word nervous to excited, it can change everything. That's right. And so you can be nervous, but if you're telling your subconscious that you're excited, then you're going to be using the adrenaline in the right way for what you need, to your advantage. And everybody always looks at me and says, that's crazy. It can't be that simple. But it works. And so if you start thinking about your own self-talk, and every time the word, and practice it, that's the practice thing.
The training.
So every time, the training. So every time you start thinking of the word nervous and you replace it with excited when you need to, or instead of saying, I have to, I get to, you're already training your brain to see it differently. So you can change your self-talk. That's the first thing. And this is where in my training I say it's harness your fear and then make it your superpower. So this is shifting into your superpowers with this, because you had the power all along. I always think about the Wizard of Oz.
That's exactly what I was
It is true.
My ruby slippers.
They are your ruby slippers, because You had the power all along. You had the power to run the race. You had what you needed to run the race. So same thing. You have whatever it is that you're going to get up and speak about. You have the expertise and the value. It's in there. Mm-hmm. You're not just going to go randomly talk about something. Right. Obviously, if you're asked to speak, you're going to be speaking on something that you know about. So changing your self-talk, number one step.
Okay.
So the next thing is you probably need to change your breathing. You need to understand how to breathe correctly. So a lot of people think to themselves, well, how is it that in the flight response everything tightens up and I can't breathe, so you're telling me that I actually can? Well, yes, you can. You're just going to take control over it. So our diaphragm is actually a powerful tool in our body that most of us don't know how to use correctly. So just like in that race that you're running, breathing control, breath control is important, right? So we have to control our breathing when we're getting ready to get up to speak, or anytime that we start feeling that flight response kick in. And it is because most of us don't know how to breathe deep enough into our lungs to get our diaphragm moving. Okay, so our diaphragm is actually a tool that helps us relax and focus. So if you just go to take a deep breath and somebody says to you, okay, take a deep breath, and you're like,
you're doing shallow.
You're shallow. You're not really taking a deep breath.
You need to, isn't it more from down here?
It is. It's got to get down here because your diaphragm sits right here. So in order for you to get it going, you have to fill it. So you have to get it way down here in your lungs, down in this area, to get the diaphragm going. So one of the things I teach my clients is something called straw breathing. And I actually, it's a breathing technique that I learned from my kids' vocal coach and one of my best friends, Allie Hutzel, is to get the air down into your lungs. Some people, if you try to do it through your nose, it still doesn't get all the way down in there unless you train yourself. So a really great way is to pretend like you have a straw, and you're going to suck in through the straw, and you're directing where the air goes.
You do it.
Yeah. And if you put your hand here, you'll feel it filling up.
And there are online exercises for these things. I've doing breathing techniques and stuff. I have looked them up. There's even something called a breathe right. I don't know if got one. I got one, and it has a similar concept. If you're having trouble making that shape or getting the feel,
but if you just have a straw, or you just pretend like you have a straw, so you use the straw. And what I do with my clients is, obviously these are not new ideas. I've just used them this way, but it is straw breathing and box breathing. So if you can control your breathing, then you're going to control the adrenaline a little bit better. You're going to get that bigger oxygen effect in your body, more lung capacity, so that you're not going to feel like you're talking like this and you can't breathe, or that you're because that's what hyperventilating is. It's just not getting the air deep enough in your lungs. So I start my clients out with a count of 6. So if you, for 6, and then you hold it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And then
out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And then you hold it.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And then again.
And that's your box. And that's your box. Some will even do like 4, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3.
Exactly.
4, so to get that consistent.
And I found that the 6 is generally a good starting place for most people, but some people may have to go back to 4, and some people even in the beginning might be able to do 8 to 10, whatever. Yeah. But what you will feel is calm. Automatically, you will start to feel calm. And so again, this is training. This is getting this in your head that you're changing your self-talk. You're doing the breathing exercises. The third one. Okay. The third tip is you have to learn how to transfer energy. So you've got to, so what happens is you get on that roller coaster. What are you doing? You're screaming, you're yelling, you're releasing energy, right? Yeah. It's actually a proven thing that if you're riding a thrill ride like that, if you yell or scream, you're much less likely to panic or get sick because you're not trying to tamp down the adrenaline. If you're trying to tamp down those nerves, if you're trying to tamp all of that down, you're trying to tamp down the very thing that's trying to give you energy. Yeah. So using the theory that everything has energy of some sort, one of the things I teach my clients to do is you want to release that energy. So you can learn to both feet on the floor and notice it at both feet on the floor. Depending on where you are in a situation. So in networking, when you're in a room full of people and you're getting up to talk about your business, you can put your hand flat on the table. You can touch the chair. You can touch the shoulder of the person next to you. And the interesting thing is if you do that, you're transferring that energy into them. So you're giving them something and you're controlling it in you. You can hold on to something. I teach a lot of people I know as a speaker to grab the microphone and hold it. You're putting your energy into that. Podium, both hands on the podium. Yeah. It's all steadying you, but you're actually releasing that. You'll notice your hands aren't as shaky.
That must be why I picked my pen up. I am like, I know I'm not going to sit here and write in front of everybody, but I will pick that pen up and gives me something to do with my hands.
Note cards. There's this misconception out there that you shouldn't have note cards or your notes in your hands. And I don't know where that came from, except that it isn't true. The best speakers in the world use a teleprompter.
Yeah, we're trying to fool you.
Yes,
that's not fair.
We use a teleprompter, and maybe they're afraid. It is true that you could get a little lost in that and be reading, and that's what they're trying to stop you from doing. But what I find with my clients is most of them will hold their note card in their hand and never look at it. It's a security blanket. Linus carried his around. You can have yours. Yeah. So it's really interesting, but it's okay if you have notes. Now, you don't want your whole speech there, like you're reading it. Obviously, it's not story time, but notes are okay. And I do teach some of my clients to just have a blank piece of paper. We call it their magic note card, and they just have a note card that they just hold in their hand, and there's nothing on it. It's okay because you're transferring all of that built up energy. You might have more energy than you needed because your body's releasing that adrenaline. And so, I know a lot of runners focus on each footfall. Yeah. Well, because you're passing that energy into the ground every footfall that you have. So it does. You have to train for it. And then the fourth thing that we work on is perception of audience.
Oh, okay.
This goes back to words and words being powerful. So if I say audience, what do you think of?
A crowd that's looking all at me and I'm nervous.
A crowd that's looking all at you. And so audience means group. It means a large amount of people. And almost every client I have, and even those students back in the day, everybody I've worked with over time says, oh, well, it's easy if it's just 1-to-1, like we are here. Or it's 2 or 3 people. Everybody has a different cutoff as to when they start to get nervous. What's yours?
I don't know. I don't think I know. I mean, I've been in a situation where I'm talking to 2 or 3 people, and then kind of I realize that, and then I'm like, oh, I think I'm kind of nervous now.
Okay.
They've stopped and they're
all looking listening. At you. So if I said, hey, Trina, I want you to come speak, and they're going to be about 10 or 15 people there.
Yeah, I'm going to start to get nervous about that. Yeah.
So what if I say, Trina, the audience is going to be about 20 to 25 people?
I personally would probably still be quite nervous about that.
How about 100?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes. Do you feel varying degrees of nervousness?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like you get, the more people, the more nervous you get. We're conditioned to think that. It's an audience. It's a large amount of people. Now, I'm going to give you a different way to see it, though.
Okay.
What comprises an audience?
More than one person, right?
Right. A group of individuals.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So if you can talk to one person, then if you shift your perception of audience to, my message is important, people need to hear what I have to say, because we're doing that with the self-talk, then you can also change your perception of audience by saying it's a group of individuals.
Okay.
It's really just one person and one person and one person. They just all happen to be there at the same time. So if you're not afraid of what that one person across the table from you is thinking, why do we have to be afraid about each of those people in the audience? We're conditioned to think audience, crowd. And while it is, they're synonymous, it's connotation of the word. So I start telling myself I'm talking to a group of individuals. I want to pay them that respect as to those are all individual people sitting there. So that's the first way I change my perception of audience. So then the next thing is I start thinking about identifying with each of those people in that room. So chances are nobody forced them to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know that I've ever been anywhere that somebody forced somebody to listen to me unless it was in my classroom, right? And even then, I couldn't force them to listen to me. However, unless you have to take this class, whatever it is, if you're going to hear somebody speak, you're choosing to do so, right? And so everybody in that room, for whatever reason, has chosen to be there, which indicates that they think I have something valuable to share with them because they're not going to take time out of their day to do that. Yeah. So we have a group of individual people who are coming because they think I have value. Does that start to shift how you feel about it?
I think so. I'm running through what you're saying to something, I'm applying it to something I'm about to do. I have to MC an event. And it's a big event, and I am very nervous about the number of people. So many people have said to me, oh, you should be used to this. Well, what they don't realize, usually when you're in a radio station, you're the only person in there, you and the board, or if you're doing a podcast, it's usually one-on-one, or it's a very controlled space. So when you've got this big audience, and you've got a script because it's important that you hit the words, you've got to thank the right people, you've got to do the right things. It's a different story. Eyes are looking back to me that I'm not used to. I feel like, what if I'm criticized for saying a word wrong? So many things.
I do love that. So let's use that.
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, changing your self-talk on this. You get to do it.
I do. I am very excited.
And you're very excited.
Yes.
So you keep telling yourself that. So now let's change the perception of that audience for just a second. We're going to look into that. So obviously somebody invited you to do this, right?
Yes.
So the people who invited you to do this have faith in you that you can do this, right?
Yes.
They didn't just randomly choose you.
Correct.
Okay. So the people who have chosen you think you can do it. All right. Another thing that I do about changing audience, when you're sitting out in the audience, are you actively thinking to yourself, wow, that person said that word wrong, da 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 da?
No, I'm kidding.
I mean, yes, but
we all sometimes do it, but then you kind of correct and you're like, goodness, they've got a lot on their shoulders, and you give them the
grace. But also you're usually sitting in the audience thinking to yourself, wow. So you have to put yourself out there as that individual.
Yeah.
You're thinking, wow, you can do this. Yay, I'm here to listen to you. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about the audience, why are we thinking about them negatively?
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, wow, that's a whole group of critics sitting out there. They all came here just to make fun of me saying that one word wrong. Right? So if we go back and we change our perception, this is a room full of individuals who are supportive. They're there for a reason, right? They've all chosen to be here. And we give them the same grace we want them to give us. Then we begin to shift. Now, this is not saying ever that you're not going to be nervous. To be a little bit nervous is good because that means that you care.
Yeah, you're invested.
You're invested. If you didn't care, I'd be concerned about you. And I'd call the people and say, she don't care about this.
Don't do it.
Yeah. But that's okay. It's okay to be nervous. It's harnessing that fear. By harnessing it and taking these steps, you're shifting it into your superpower because you're relating with that entire audience. If you were in their shoes, what would you be thinking? What would you be wanting? What is it that you are doing for them? You're doing it for them, not to them. So, and also letting go of that idea that if there is somebody out there who's thinking that, so what?
Yeah, and that's a big one.
So what?
Yeah.
So change your perception of that audience. Be excited that you get to connect with them. Know that they are, most of them, cheering you on, wanting you to do well with what you're doing. They're not waiting for the mistakes.
Yeah.
And then laugh when you make one.
Yeah.
We're so human. You know, when I used to train my team in sales, one of the things that I would have people say to me when they would want to join my team. So most of my people that came onto my team came from the shows that I was doing. And I'm clumsy. So let's put this together for a second. I sold candles and a lot of them would be burning on the table and I would go to talk about them. So you can imagine the things that have happened, right? I also would forget the name of something or the color of something. And I would have people come up to me and say, I think I could do this because you make it look so simple.
Yeah.
And also, if you make mistakes, then people think they can do it too. So how many people might you inspire in that audience to do something they were afraid of before because you look real and you look human and you look normal.
Yeah.
It's not about making the mistakes or stumbling over the words. It's what you do with it after you've done it. And so when you start changing the way that you see all of it, it changes it for you. So I used to say, wow, and you too can be a candle person because you don't have to do things perfectly, you know, or I would call something the wrong thing, and that's where I would go with that. So
I think another important point that you might be able to speak to is you were talking about the transfer of energy and even being the person in the audience and the person on stage. When you can give them that smile, if you're in the audience and you can give them that smile, or if you're on stage and you can connect with someone that is offering you that kind eye, and it can boost your presentation like tenfold.
100%. One of the things that I also coach my clients to do is when you're there in that room, in whatever capacity, whether people are coming in, or you have that moment to actually look around. The moment that you start finding individuals in the audience, so humans, we actually connect with people within 7 seconds of laying eyes on them. So we decide whether we have something to connect with that person on within 7 seconds. And then you have about 30 seconds after that to really tell them who you are. But so if you think about that 7 seconds, and in this emceeing that you're getting ready to do, I mean, you're going to be in that room. You're going to be able to look out and see people. Find the people you connect with. They're there.
Yeah.
And once you do that, when you're speaking, you're looking at each person that are around the room. And obviously can't look at every single person, but even performers who perform for thousands will tell you there's always that person that stands out. And you're right. So when you're passing that energy along and you're feeling good about what you're doing and you have done the training to get out there, you're changing those people's lives that day, and you may never know it.
Yeah.
But you're directly connecting with each of them. And I recently was blessed to be able to go and speak to some children at the alternative school here in Springfield. And the message that I was there to give them is that you have value and you have expertise, and people want to hear what you have to say. So you have to know how to do that. And they were getting ready to do presentations, and so I went to speak with them about the harness your fear, make it your superpower. And using the tips that I have given them, kids that have never wanted to speak, a girl who ran out of the room the last time that she had to speak, all did it. Using those tips. So they work. This works. So if you do it, it works. And for some people, they don't need any help with it. They get the tips, they go, they take the tips and they do it. Where I come in to walk alongside people is to help those who are struggling with that and need the extra help along the way, just like you would hire a trainer if you needed one. So,
I think that's really valuable tips, and it can really make or break the way you interact, and even with the audience. Have you ever been observing a speaker in an audience and you do see one gets nervous, then they get nervous, and then and if that can be mitigated by what you're talking about, and they there's a smile that's offered, and they calm down and they take a breath, and it just runs smooth.
It really does. We are all connected, and like you said, that energy runs through the room. And so when we harness that fear, embrace that it exists, we're not trying to completely eradicate it, we're changing it. We're not saying don't be afraid. We're saying here is what's happening to you. Now you have the knowledge of how to deal with that.
Understand it.
Now you understand it. Now you're harnessing it, and you're turning it into what you need to be strong to go out there and share. And that's why it helps you in everything else that you do, because in your interpersonal communications, you're training yourself that you have to think about the words that you're choosing. You're training yourself to stay calm in a situation. You're training yourself to think before you speak. You're training yourself to pace and not dump on everybody. So think about how that could change. And when I was speaking to these teenagers, that's what I told them is, imagine if you approached a problem with your principal, with your teachers, with your caregivers, in a way where you thought it through and you could make your points and you could do it confidently. Imagine how that would change their response to what you're saying to them. And that's what I say is, we are not, as a society, we are not empowered to be seen and heard. And I think that has to change. I think we should be empowered to be seen and heard. I used to tell my students all the time, that's why the squeaky wheel gets the oil, because they don't mind being the squeaky wheel. That doesn't mean that what they're saying is effective or true or any of those things, but it does draw attention. It doesn't last long, though. Just because you're the squeaky wheel, it doesn't last long. Instead, if you can pull all of this together and train yourself to be seen and heard effectively, that's when you get to make a difference for yourself or the people around you. So that's when you have the power. And imagine what that can be for you, whether that is an opportunity for you to present your business at a ribbon cutting, or you get to speak to inspire people, or you want to have a say in something that's happening in your children's school, or you want to have a say in what's happening in your own school, your own home, your own life, your own neighborhood, you're going to be heard if you can do it in a way that connects you. And so that's the first thing, is harnessing that fear. It becomes your superpower because you're using it to connect, to build, to empower.
And when it's time and you have all of that under control, you need to be prepared with what you're going to.
That is the final step. Absolutely. You have to be prepared. Very few people can just speak from the cuff.
No.
I mean, if you're me and you could talk to the wall over there, that's fine. You can come up with something, but that's years of training and practice.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to be prepared. So the first thing you have to do is you have to organize your message.
Okay.
That is sitting down, looking at your message, and figuring out the points you want to make. So you have to figure out the points. You have to figure out the supporting information for each point. And then you have to organize that in order of importance, the flow. That's how you figure out the flow. And so you have a topic, you come up with what you want to talk about. Then you figure out the points that are going to support that. You then figure out the information to support each point. And then you figure out the way that that's going to naturally flow and develop. So that's the first one, is organize your message.
Okay.
Then you have to be ready to move into presenting that message. Okay.
And that we will get into in our next episode. I mean, nothing is worse than you finally get ready to, ask for your curfew to be extended, and your mom and dad's listening to you, and you're like, well, you've got to be ready with why.
Yeah, just because.
Because isn't going to cut it.
That's right, you do.
So you're going to tell us how to perfect that presentation after we've harnessed our fear, we've got everything under control. So come back for episode 3 next time. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell people where they can go to connect with you if they're ready to start.
They can go to my website, which is michellerickman.com. They can find me on Facebook, Michele Rickman Coaching. My email is Michelle with 1 L at michellerickman.com. Very important to know when you're typing that in. Yeah, I only have 1 L in my name. Michelle at michellerickman.com. You can message me through Instagram or Facebook. I'm Michele Rickman Coaching on both of those. So yeah, just reach out and I'll see how I can help.
Sounds great. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Run Radio Podcast for Business series featuring Michele Rickman Coaching. Learn more about Michelle and her coaching at michellerickman.com.